Have you ever wondered if your kid has ADHD or it's normal behavior? Are we expecting too much from our kids? Do you even know what a normal attention span is? Hi, I'm Dr. Roseann. I'm a mental health trailblazer, and join me as we have real conversations about real solutions to kids' problems. And today, we're going to be talking about, is it ADHD or is it normal behavior? And we're going to talk about how to help parents figure that out. Let's dive in. So, your kid, they may be a little rambunctious. They may have a hard time listening. They may only be able to focus when they're playing video games. How about their grades look like the stock market? Um, Maybe your kid does have ADHD. Maybe it's normal. Maybe it's developmental phase. Let's talk about that today because ADHD is one of the most common mental health conditions affecting kids, not just in the United States, even though we have the highest rates of ADHD in the world, and rates of psychiatric medication for ADHD have completely skyrocketed during the pandemic. And we're not even talking about adults. The rates of ADHD during the pandemic, because hello, nobody could focus, and people couldn't know how to work from home unless they had already experienced it and they got thrown into it. And they really struggled with focus and having kids at home and all these things. But let's talk about our kids, right? So, when is it normal to be unfocused? When is it normal to have difficulty finishing a task? And, all those other things in terms of impulse control that we know come along with clinical ADHD, right? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And there's different kinds, right? So some people are more unfocused. Some people are more impulsive, and some are combined. Those are the three types in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, also called the DSM, also called in my world, basically, it's going to lead you to a pharma. That's what it's designed for. But this is what we have, and you should understand what we have in terms of diagnostics, right? So ADHD is a clinical disorder that affects kids. You must see symptoms before age 12, and you must show a variety of these symptoms. And it's got to have a significant impact, right? You can't just have a period of being unfocused, like, for example, having brain fog after COVID, or your stress level is up because you were bullied or you moved, and then you're having a hard time being focused. But when we talk about is it normal or ADHD, we really have to understand what is normal attention, right? And I think that there is clearly we know about the brain, right? Is there's a range of attention, right? So, anybody who hangs out with me knows basically I could have like 67 tabs open on my computer and my brain, and I can know where everything is. I have really good executive functioning, and I'm super, super organized. Does it mean that I didn't probably have an attention problem in the 80s when I sat in school and literally read books not related to class, and was daydreaming all the time? Probably, but I've done a lot of neurofeedback. It's really hard to tell. I can tell you my attention and, again, executive functioning is stellar. Certainly post neurofeedback. And I always was an organized systems kind of thinker. And you either are or you're not, right? You can either always see the forest, which I always see the forest, and then I see where that forest fits in with all the other forests, right? I'm that kind of person. Where does everything link together? Or you only see the trees. And I can tell when I talk to people, do they start with details or do they start with the big ideas? And certainly we know about the brain is when you're more structured in your thinking, you can hold more information. You can, your working memory is going to be stronger. Everything's more organized. But let's talk about what's normal development. So a typical 2-year-old, right, is going to be able to pay attention for 4 to 6 minutes. And generally every 2 years, sort of after that, it can increase by about 6 or so minutes. So a typical 10-year-old can hold their attention for 20 to 30 minutes. I know you say they can hold it for 60. I know you say they can hold it for 6 hours playing video games, but that is designed to give constant feedback to the brain, and hook you in. They have psychologists who are going to hell because their living is to help kids be totally hooked on video games. So, and I'm joking, but I'm not, right? Like you get a PhD so you can make a ton of money and work for a video game. No, not cool. But it's giving a high level of stimulation. And what do we know about attention? You're going to be able to pay more attention when you like something, right? So, like Dr. Rowe here, I love to cook. I could cook for hours. It's fun. It's super relaxing to me. And actually, is one of the only things I physically do that my mind isn't busy. Like I can concentrate on the task without being like, here's my next book idea, you know? Or pop in a worry about a client or something, right? My mind is very divergent and easily stimulated. And so when we are enjoying ourselves, we have way better attention because the brain is more stimulated. When it's boring, I'm watching a little bit of some sports. It's never going to happen. My family knows this. Oh my gosh. And in 30 seconds, I'm distracted and I can't do it. Right. So it's the same for our kids, people. So when we think about a 10-year-old having that kind of attention span, a 16-year-old should be 32 to 48 minutes. That doesn't mean getting up and not moving. Okay. Because we want to have movement. But there is a wide variety of levels of attention span depending on the type of information. Certainly, our kids with ADHD are more kinesthetic visual learners, and they are generally not auditory learners. And within that, there's a big range. So, how do we know it's a problem? Just like if it's anxiety or depression, if your focus is getting in the way of your daily functioning, it's a problem. So let's unpack that, right? Because we also have expectations and we have what's developmentally appropriate. And I think this is the problem. I actually had to do a video for a client parents today because their expectations were ridiculous. They wanted me to call them back within like an hour of a request. And I was like, that does not happen here. You signed off on that. Everybody knows that. You get videos from Dr. Rowe and audios. That's how it works. Okay, people? I have appointments all day. So when we think about kids' behaviors, I remember one time, it's a story you're going to hear me repeat because it's literally the most ridiculous expectation I've ever seen for a child's behavior, probably other than, like the princes and princesses. I had a mother who was very upset that her 4-year-old couldn't make her bed perfectly. And I was like, in what world does a 4-year-old, is a 4-year-old able to make their bed? Because I'd like to know that. So when we think about our kids and what they're doing, is your expectation too high? Number one. Is the task clear? Have you made the implicit, what you assume they know, explicit? Okay. And that's really, really important. And is not only does your kid, the appropriateness, the implicit and explicit, do they really know what to do? Okay. Don't just assume you've had a conversation, there's some practice. Okay. So when you meet those 3 criteria, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but you meet those criteria and your child is struggling, right? I really can't clean my room. I can't stop touching the kids on the block. Like we see a pattern of behavior. One time is not a major problem unless it's a safety issue. Okay. Unless they're, also saying horrible things about themselves or those kind of things. Like it's very reflective and underlying psychological need. But when we are seeing a pattern of difficulty, we have a problem. Okay. Houston, we have a problem. So we then want to say, is there something going on here? Right. So when I meet with somebody, obviously I am doing analysis in our brain behavior reset program. We're doing a Q, EEG, or a brain check. So I don't have to guess. I can say, holy cow, this is ADHD. Oh, holy cow, this is a head trauma or anxiety or learning disability even. But I go back and look, right? Did the preschool teacher come to you and say, hey, Marcus, super smart, but can never finish his work? Or Josephine annoys the other kids by touching them all the time. is there some indications that there's a problem? And with that, it doesn't mean it's always that early, but I want to say to you, preschool is a time if kids are more on the impulsive side, well, things will come up. Kindergarten and first grade, third, sixth, ninth, and college are transition years. And kids with ADHD are smarter than typical. They have a high average IQ on in general, so they may be compensating. Okay. So what do you do about it? So one, you want to follow those things, be super clear, make the implicit explicit, and give them practice, and then see what happens. So let's just make that assumption, and then reach out to a mental health professional or a medical professional. I'd rather you go to a mental health professional because they can help you narrow down some of these behaviors without feeling like you have to medicate your kid. So please know there's I have 5 reasons not to medicate your kid. Please go back and listen to that episode. I do not believe in medicating a developing brain. We have a real potential to damage the brain, and we want to make sure we are starting with behavioral support, parenting support, and natural alternatives like our supplement line that's going to be coming out, Neurotastic, which is my own formulation to help the brain focus. So wherever you're at is where you need to be. That is really important.